Yo. What's going on, guys? It is your boy, Player X here of the Semi Limited Podcast, back again for another week's installment of the best podcast this side of the TCG for sure. Before we start, as usual, just want to give everyone a big thanks for listening to the podcast, especially those returning back from last year, where we were the top podcast for 40 plus viewers for 2023. Thank you guys so much for that. And we can't thank you guys enough for helping us do all that and much more, especially leading into 2024. Now that we are basically almost halfway through the year and more or less grinding on that grindstone for you guys, as well as delivering not only the best podcast this side of the TCG, but as well as the best content that we can out there from the local Syracuse area. On today's episode, we are going to be going over some of the big tournaments that happened last week, such as YCS Japan and the Greek Open, as well as some news from Konami that might be a little sound offish, as well as a potential giveaway announcement as well. But before we get into all that, let's get into these sponsored plugins as usual, guys. Please go down to that Linktree link down in the description box below to follow all of our social sites. You'll click that link, a little tab will pop up with all of our social media sites and all of our pages on there. Just be sure to go click, follow, subscribe, yada yada, comment, whatever it is that you guys want to do. But be sure that you are following at the very least or subscribe, so that way you can be alerted when we start doing our giveaways. We will do more giveaways this year. We're trying to aim for a little bit more than double what we did last year, but it looks like we're kind of like just on pace. So I want to kind of kick it up a little bit. But we will be doing more giveaways when we have 50 followers on TikTok, 100 followers on Twitter and or X, whatever you want to call it, and then 200 followers on Instagram, YouTube, and Discord. So be sure to be jumping in on all of those platforms to be in as much as the giveaways as you guys can be, and then stay as formed as you guys can be about not only the podcast and content going on in the TCG, but as well as the giveaways as well. Shout outs also to Unplugged Gaming in Manlius, New York for sponsoring the podcast. Be sure to join their Discord server in the description box below to be a part of their TCG communities. Whether it's Yu-Gi-Oh, maybe it might be Lorcana, or maybe some Bandai games. Who knows? Maybe even Magic might be your thing. But whatever it is, if it's a piece of cardboard, be sure to go down to the Unplugged Gaming Discord. You can be sure to jump in on all of the cardboard Discord communities they have, that, whether it be the Yu-Gi-Oh one, maybe it's Pokemon's your thing, or maybe even something like One Piece or something like that. You can go down there, find out what's going on in those card games, and then when you guys go in person to maybe trade with someone, or maybe come and play or whatever it is, you guys can mention that the Semi Limited Podcast brought you there, and they'll be sure to hook you guys up. And then last but not least, as usual, be sure to catch Brad, aka Mr. Perfect, live streaming on Twitch every Saturday night at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. His Twitch will be in the Linktree link below as well, so it'll be right above ours. You can click on that to Semi-Perfect Gaming and catch him every Saturday night at 11 p.m. Usually doing something on EDO Pro, maybe something on Master Duel. He's deck theory and craft. It doesn't matter what he's doing because he's doing it for you guys. So if you guys want to be interacting with him or have nothing to do on a Saturday night, be sure to go check him out. And be sure, if you do interact with him, that you make sure that he tells you to be put on the Friday night wrap-up. And with all that out of the way, let's get into today's episode, starting off with the big tournaments that we've had pass by us last week. Although North America usually has all of the heated tournaments, this week we had to head across the sea to go get all of the goo, as it was the European and Japan areas that were having all of the big tournaments this weekend. Started off with the Greek Open that happened over in Greece. It was a tournament that was 9-round competition, similarly to how you would see a regional, except for this one was televised and actually was streamed. The great part about this one, though, was that it was our first look into the ingenuity that people had with the new set being legal. Legacy Destruction definitely came with a bang, as many players decided to take the new budget alternative deck from within it to this event, being Tempai Dragons. Now, the deck was very much represented and managed to even win out the entire event, with the pilot going XO all day. That's 9-0 out of 9 rounds for a perfect score, which also showed in the final stream when I watched the pilot himself play the deck and actually play and maneuver his way firsthand to the most notably amusing win I think I've ever seen. It was also notable that the deck that his opponent was on, which also made it to the finals as well, was being Buster Blader Dragonlock, which was basically just a hard counter to the Tempai deck, and they still wound up having to face off each other against each other in the finals, and I think that that was kind of hilarious. Although the Buster Blader player kind of bricked in game one and then got high rolled game two and was brutally 2-0'd in like I think like 15-20 minutes or whatever it was. I was still curious to see how he managed to make it that far with only the explanation that makes sense to me being that the sheer number of Tempai players really allowed him to have the upper hand in most of his matchups, especially when the Tempai players want to make you go first so that way they can go second and OTK you in the battle phase. So that was definitely enough of the upper hand to sneak away with some of the wins from their opponents, especially like I said with their opponents making them go first. So whether you win the die roll, you're going first, you're putting up the lock, or if you lose the die roll, if you're going against Tempai, they're gonna make you go first, and you're still setting up block and stopping them from doing what they want to do. So if it wasn't for such a badly, I would say I don't even want to say it's prepared because like it's not like the deck wasn't strong and made it to the finals. He just bricked in game one, and then he had gotten double belled in game two, and then, that's just the way it comes down to those Tempai players can fit like 25 hand traps in their deck and just say, all right, cool, if I'm not playing, you're not playing either. And usually that's how it goes. But, you never really quite know how these events will at least turn out because sometimes it's a board breaker format, sometimes it's a hand trap format. Although we've been in a hand trap format for like the last 3 ones, that doesn't mean that it can't switch very, very fast to a board breaker format, especially with a deck like this being the one that's taking it to the next level. And speaking of Tempai Dragon, another event went down last week that literally was the most attended event in card game history, and that was the YCS that took place in Japan, over there in Tokyo. And by no means was I joking when I say that either. YCS Japan this year literally broke a Guinness World Record for the amount of players attending a card game at one time, and I think that it was like a whopping like 7,600 players. That's 7,600 plus players were in attendance participating in this event. Wild numbers for sure, I'll tell you that. And with the representation that strong, the event did not disappoint by any means. The only difference between this event and others like it, especially in the TCG, is that this event was a best of one series, not a best of three. So it's kind of like a little bit different as well as far as how you have to deck build, how you have to actually play, taking time to like really think about every single little move that you make because there is no games 2 and 3 to help pick you up. After game 1, that's it. A winner will be decided and the loser will not be moving on. It does make sense when you have 8,000 players trying to get through an entire 2A event as structured as it can be and as kind of like organized as you can be. But it definitely adds a little bit of a variation to the competition, almost similarly to how you would play in Master Duel tournaments. For those who participate in those, Master Duels has tournaments every once in a while. Well, they'll have like a certain little theme or something like that, where it's like XYZ Festival or maybe Synchro Fest or whatever it is, where you're only allowed to play with those type of cards. And Master Duel itself is a best of one series to begin with, so it is a little bit odd for them to having to do that. But with 8,000 people, I can understand it. But that's not real Yu-Gi-Oh in my eyes, I guess. Maybe you can just call me this one of the boomer generation, but Yu-Gi-Oh is best played when there's a best of three, when there's a side deck, when you have actual accounting of like how you should be playing, how you should be taking your weaknesses and strengths into account while you're preparing not only your main deck and extra deck but also your side deck, because that's where 66% of your fucking games are played. So I mean, it's just not the same type of Yu-Gi-Oh, which is why I personally don't play Master Duel. But hey, that's just me. Nevertheless, at the end of the event, it all came down to 2 decks sitting at the very last table trying to compete for the title of YCS Japan. And those decks were Tempai Dragons, of course, and Voiceless Voice, which is an odd stray away from the usual Snake Eyes cards that you might be used to seeing in the top cut. Both pilots did give it their all for sure, but best of ones really don't leave room for any mistakes or errors, even if they aren't the player's fault. As I said, just bricking in game 1 and then just being high rolled by having your opponent have 2 bells for your crucial cards that banish for cost that need to resolve. This doesn't sit really well or compute for certain players, but alas, the winner of the entire tournament was Voiceless Voice, proving that this may not be a solo fire dynasty that many players are preaching about after all. I know a lot of the TCG turnovers and deck profiles have a lot of the Snake Eyes in it, a lot of the Fire King, a lot of merging of the two, even with decks like Kashtira Fire King Snake Eyes or whatever fuck they're playing nowadays. But Yeah, Snake Eyes, although has been taking over and stayed at the top for quite some time, might finally have some sort of competition going on with it. And it's funny enough because I was just talking to Team Sakurazo, who, what shout outs to him, is one of the other Yu-Gi-Oh market watchers in the community. We were talking in our Discord not too long ago about just Tenpai Dragons and how, although it was heavily represented, it's not favored by many of the pro players as being one of the better decks. Like as I say, you can get high rolled. There's times where you open a lot of engine. Oh, sorry, a lot of non-engine because you can play 25 non-engine slots to your 15 card engine. So there's times where you do break, where you do play unplayable as far as like engine wise. But there are times where you see that one card starter and then four hand traps, and it works entirely in your favor and flawlessly victory, all that stuff. But it's definitely showing that there are sort of dips and, curves going on in the format to see where they're going to end up, right? So I just thought that that was something that needed to be mentioned about, especially breaking a Guinness World Record for the amount of players in a tournament. I thought that it would honestly go to like something like Pokemon or even Magic the Gathering, where I just know that those games have been around for a lot longer than Poke or Yu-Gi-Oh has. So I just thought that those would be like one of the games to break that record. But hey, now Konami's got some heat under their seat for sure, because they now know that they have probably one of the most popular card games out right now, and a lot of eyes are definitely about to be on them for sure. And also, lastly on the docket today, because I didn't want to speak too much on it, we will be speaking more about Konami. As they decided to drop a few words for us on their online platforms about players being potentially banned over their words and not their cards. Yes, that's right. Konami announced the other day that they will be suspending and even banning certain players for certain actions. And this all seemed to stem from a viral infomercial from Konami about the new Tenpai Dragons from Legacy Destructions, where Konami officials will go on YouTube and release little short clips with certain influencers and representatives about explaining what the cards do coming up, and like certain sets, like what's coming out and all that stuff. So Jerome, which is one of our NA Konami reps, basically stated that if you don't have your copy of Trident Dragon, which to those who don't know right now, which if you've been living under a rock, is about $100 to $150 ultra secret rare from like 15 years ago that is yet to see a reprint. And because it's the focal point of this entire archetype, it has seen a crazy surge in price and spike in the market to the point where now people are priced out of the deck because they can't afford to play it with having their boss monster there. So they said to check your bulk and ask a friend if they've got one for you. And although as funny as that shit sounds, and as troll as it sounds, it would seem that that was the straw that actually broke the camel's back with many players, as it sent Yu-Gi-Oh players off the deep end, and they lost their shit. Even as far as apparently commenting and leaving very nasty remarks about not only Jerome as well as the Konami reps, but the card game as well, and even threatening them via online intimidation. And although as one troll on the inside, being myself, it's very much giddy to see that all the attention has finally gotten up to Konami for them enough to go out and ban players for the use of words. Like, that just is a little bit funny to me. I don't agree that this is the best way to use their influence. Instead of taking action against players who are outraged and angry, which they should be. I mean, you're now hearing from the Konami creator of the card game saying that instead of reprinting a card that they know people are going to want to play and at least have, and is being spiked on the secondary market, and instead of reprinting it, they're just saying, oh yeah, go check your bulk, go check with your friends who may have it in their bulk, because we're definitely not printing that shit. So for you to know that you have a $100 to $200 card out there that's not easily accessible because it's been 15 years since a reprint, and you're telling me that you guys are just okay with telling your player base to just, yeah, go find it. Yeah, that just doesn't seem right to me either. This doesn't really sit well. It doesn't like show me that you guys are like trying to at least assist, especially with the way the Konami talks to and communicates with their player base to begin with, not having very many places to file complaints towards or aim our grievances. They don't even really talk to us in like a very like distinct manner. It's always like, yeah, we'll work on that. Yeah, we'll get around to it. Yeah, your ban list is coming in a couple months. Who cares when? You know what I'm saying? We don't even know. It just seems a little bit unprofessional, at least, that it's going that way. And in no way, shape, or form am I condoning or tolerating death threats or threats of any kind for that matter. But come on, Konami, let's just not be ignorant. We all know for a fact what you guys are doing. You guys run this shit, and you guys are more than welcome, or more than capable, I should say, of being able to bring things like this into the reprint forefront and allowing the player base access to the cards that they are going to need, clearly, if you're going ahead and saying how important it's going to be in the upcoming sets. That just makes no fucking sense to me. Also, before we close out, once again, I wanted to go ahead and give another announcement. Like as we said, we will be giving away another announcement as we probably hit closer to the 200 followers on YouTube. I think we're at like 196 or something like that. We're a couple followers away from there, as well as getting close to it on Instagram. But we wanted to make sure that another giveaway that we were going to be handing out to another person is actually to a prior guest who's been on this podcast. So Vengeful Shadows, who is a usual regular on this show, we have decided to send out a box of Legacy of Destruction to him, so that way he can now give away to his community as well. So we are kind of sponsoring him in a bit with some of the content that we have. So be sure to go over to Vengeful Shadows Twitter and YouTube, which you can check on our last video or our upload, more or less, and find out how you guys can be a part of that as well, because he will be putting up soon, if it's on Twitter or YouTube, how you can be taking a part into the giveaway for the free box of Legacy Destruction and when it will be happening. And best be sure that your boys over here at the Semi-Limited Podcast will be deeply tied into that to help out as much as we can. But with all that being said, guys, we are starting to run out of life points. I didn't want this to be a long episode, just something for you guys to have to brush up on. Although a lot did happen, we still have lots more going on over the next couple weekends with a little bit more of the regional runs going on, including YCS Indy, and to see where Infinite Forbidden actually takes us as the next core set in the next couple months as well. Before we sign off, as usual, guys, you already know, go click that Linktree link, follow all the sites, be ready for all the giveaways when they come out. Also be sure to, while you're down there, click on Unplugged Gaming is Discord channel, because they sponsor the podcast, so shout out to them, to be part of their Discord server and be a part of their TCG communities as well. And also, if you guys are not doing shit on a Saturday night, you're bored, you just want to be something influenced with Yu-Gi-Oh!, be sure to catch Brad, aka Mr. Perfect, streaming every Saturday night on Twitch at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That is the East Coast of the United States for those who are outside of it. You can catch him doing things like being on Master Duel, maybe EDO Pro, Dueling Book, Omega. No matter what it is, he's down there trying to have some fun with his chat and interact with you guys as well. So be sure to catch him out down there as well and interact with him during his chat, because he will report to me and let me know everything that happens on the Friday night wrap up. And with that being said, guys, we are all out of time for today's episode. I just want to thank you guys so much for basically listening and tuning in to another episode of the podcast. We will be back later on this week for another wrap up episode for this week. And with that being said, guys, good night.